My wife got pregnant by her brother-in-law to help her sister have a child. She tried to manipulate me into signing as the father. I exposed them and served her with divorce papers in front of everyone. 2 years later, she's begging me to help with her child. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Sup, Reddit. This story starts at what should have been a normal family birthday dinner, but turned into the moment I realized my wife of 7 years was a completely different person than I thought. Fair warning, it's long, but seriously, you'll need to read the whole thing. Amanda's dad was turning 60, so her sister Caroline threw this big family dinner at her place. Standard family stuff. Too much food, Caroline stressing about everything being perfect, David, Caroline's husband, grilling steaks and talking about his new boat. I was actually looking forward to it because we hadn't all been together in months. But I should have been paying attention to the weird vibe between Amanda and David. Little things that didn't register at the time. How she laughed a bit too hard at his jokes. How they both volunteered to get more drinks from the kitchen at the same time. How David's hand lingered on her shoulder when he passed behind her chair. The conversation inevitably turned to Caroline and David's fertility struggles. They'd been trying for 3 years, spent a fortune on treatments, and Caroline was getting desperate. She was 34 and feeling like time was running out. Amanda made this comment about how unfair it was that good couples couldn't have kids while others had them by accident. At the time, I thought she was just being supportive. Now I know she was testing the waters for the twisted plan she'd already put into motion. The real clue came later that week when I needed Amanda's laptop for something. Mine was getting repaired, and I had a client presentation to finish. She was in the shower, and her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. The email on screen made my blood freeze. Fertility tracking confirmed. Peak window this Thursday. It wasn't from any doctor's office. It was from a Gmail account I didn't recognize. My gut told me something was seriously wrong, so I did what any smart guy would do. I started digging. What I found in her email history made me want to punch a wall. Months of messages between Amanda and David. And I'm not talking about innocent family planning discussions. These were coordination messages about meetups, discussions about optimal timing, and detailed plans about how they were going to handle the logistics of her getting pregnant. The worst part was reading how they talked about me and Caroline, like we were just obstacles to work around. He won't suspect anything if we're careful. Caroline's at her book club Thursdays. That's our best window. Once I'm pregnant, we just need to make sure the timeline makes sense. But here's the thing. They weren't planning to tell Caroline the truth. They were going to let her raise David's biological child while thinking it was some generous gesture from Amanda and me. David would get to be a dad to his actual kid while Caroline played house with a lie. And me? I was supposed to be the legal father and financial provider for a child that resulted from my wife banging her sister's husband. The perfect crime, except they were stupid enough to use email. I took screenshots of everything. Every single message, every coordination detail, every disgusting exchange. Then I closed the laptop and sat in my kitchen for about 2 hours just thinking. Some guys would have confronted her right then, started screaming, thrown her stuff on the lawn, made a big dramatic scene. But I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who plans, who thinks 3 moves ahead. That night, when Amanda came home from her girls' night out, which I now knew was actually a fertility appointment with David, I acted completely normal. Made dinner, asked about her day, watched Netflix like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I just wasn't going to let her know until I was ready to completely destroy her world. The next morning, Amanda left for what she said was a work meeting, but which I now knew was probably another attempt to get knocked up by her brother-in-law. As soon as she was gone, I got to work. First call was to my brother Marcus. He runs a construction business and has always been the more financially savvy one between us. Marcus is also the most blunt person I know. Dude doesn't sugarcoat anything and always has my back when shit hits the fan. I need to transfer ownership of my carpentry workshop to you, temporarily, for tax purposes, I told him. Tax purposes, my ass, Marcus said immediately. What did Amanda do? I couldn't hide anything from him, even if I wanted to. She's been screwing David and got herself pregnant, planning to make me raise his kid. There was a long pause. Then, well, that's screwed up even for her. Yeah, I'll take the business. When do we do this? Marcus didn't ask too many questions after that. We've always had each other's backs, and he could tell from my voice that I was in war mode. The paperwork was done by lunch. On paper, I no longer owned the business that Amanda would try to claim half of in the divorce. Marcus and I had a handshake agreement that he'd transfer it back to me once the dust settled. But legally, I was now just an employee of his company. Next, I started the careful process of protecting our other assets. We had about $47,000 in our joint savings account, money I'd earned through years of 60-hour weeks and side projects. I started making business expense withdrawals. $3,000 here for equipment, $5,000 there for inventory, $2,500 for truck maintenance. All legitimate business expenses that happened to drain our joint account into my business account, which was now technically Marcus's business account. I also prepaid a bunch of stuff. 6 months of truck insurance, paid in full. A year's worth of business licenses and permits. I even prepaid rent on the workshop space for 8 months. All legitimate expenses, all documented, all removing money from Amanda's reach. The beauty of it was that Amanda never paid attention to our finances. She did her freelance graphic design work, made decent money, but always left the boring stuff like bills and investments to me. She had no idea how much we had or where it was kept. I didn't have to worry about the house. I'd bought it 2 years before we got married with money I'd saved from my business. Amanda's name wasn't on the deed, the mortgage, or any of the paperwork. She'd moved into my house when we got married, not the other way around. That 3-bedroom ranch with the big garage workshop out back was mine, period. While I was quietly moving assets, I was also documenting everything Amanda was doing. I didn't need a private investigator. I had something better. I had her email password and the knowledge of exactly where she was going and when. I started taking photos of her leaving the house when she was supposedly going to help Caroline with errands. I'd drive by the clinic where I knew she and David were meeting and snap pictures of his truck in the parking lot during her appointment times. Marcus helped with some of the surveillance without me even asking. One day he texted me, "Saw Amanda and that loser David at the Olive Garden on 5th Street. She was feeding him breadsticks like they were newlyweds. Thought you should know." The evidence was piling up, but I wasn't in any hurry. I wanted to be absolutely sure of my position before I made my move. During this time, Amanda was playing the perfect wife. She was being extra nice to me, cooking my favorite meals, initiating sex more often, which made my skin crawl once I knew what she was doing, and talking about our future together. She even brought up the idea of us having kids soon, probably to set up her cover story. "Don't you think it's time we started trying?" she asked one night while we were watching a movie. "Maybe," I said, knowing she was probably already pregnant with another man's child. The hardest part was acting normal around Caroline and David. We had dinner at their place a few weeks after I'd discovered everything, and I had to sit there listening to David complain about work stress while he was secretly screwing my wife. Caroline talked about their latest fertility treatment failure, not knowing her husband was actively trying to knock up her sister. But I kept my mouth shut and played the role, because I knew that when I finally revealed the truth, the impact would be devastating precisely because no one saw it coming. About 4 weeks after my discovery, Amanda started showing early pregnancy symptoms. Morning sickness, fatigue, weird food cravings. She told me she thought she might be pregnant, and we should wait and see before getting excited. I acted happy and supportive. 6 weeks after I discovered the affair, Amanda confirmed what I already knew. She was pregnant. She made this big production of showing me the positive pregnancy test, complete with tears of joy and talk about how perfect the timing was. "I can't believe it happened so fast," she said, which was hilarious considering she'd been working on it for months with another man. I played my part perfectly, hugged her, said all the right things, even opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate. But inside, I was calculating exactly how much rope to give her before I pulled the noose tight. When I called Marcus to tell him the good news, his response was pure gold. "Congratulations on your wife's pregnancy with another dude's baby. Should I start shopping for world's greatest uncle to someone else's kid shirts?" The family dinner where she announced the pregnancy was pure theater. Caroline cried, but not happy tears. She was struggling with another failed IVF cycle, and seeing her younger sister accidentally get pregnant was clearly painful. David acted surprised and supportive, giving Oscar-worthy performance as the excited soon-to-be uncle. Amanda suggested that maybe this was fate's way of bringing our families closer together, and that she hoped Caroline and David would be very involved in the baby's life. Caroline managed to smile and said she'd love to help however she could. What Caroline didn't know was that Amanda was planning to hand over the baby after birth, letting Caroline raise her own husband's child while thinking it was a generous gift from her sister. Over the next few weeks, Amanda started floating ideas about how close our families were becoming. She suggested we should do more things together. The most disgusting part was watching Amanda manipulate Caroline's emotions. She'd invite Caroline to prenatal appointments that weren't real appointments. Let Caroline feel the baby kick, and talk about how lucky this child would be to have such an amazing aunt. Caroline was getting emotionally attached to a baby she thought was her nephew, but was actually her stepson. Amanda even started talking about godparents and suggesting that Caroline and David should obviously be the ones chosen for that honor. She was setting up the whole framework for eventually handing over the child while making it seem like a natural progression. Watching Amanda beam while Caroline wiped away tears. That was rough. I almost said something right there, but I reminded myself, let them dig the hole deeper. Meanwhile, I continued securing my assets. I'd managed to move about $38,000 out of Amanda's reach through various legitimate business expenses and prepayments. The remaining $9,000 in our joint account was enough to avoid suspicion, but not enough to matter in a divorce settlement. I also consulted a divorce attorney. Quietly, I found someone with experience in high-conflict divorces involving infidelity and asset protection. I explained my situation and showed him some of the evidence I'd gathered. You've got a strong case, he told me. Adultery, fraud, emotional manipulation of family members. And the fact that you've documented everything from the beginning puts you in an excellent position. We discussed strategy. The key was timing. I needed to wait until I had maximum impact while protecting myself legally. Marcus was my unofficial strategy consultant through all this. When I told him about Amanda's plan to let Caroline raise the baby, his response was, "So your wife's basically running a long-con baby swap operation. That's not manipulative at all." By Amanda's 4th month, I had everything I needed. The pregnancy was showing enough that she couldn't deny it, but early enough that she hadn't had time to fully execute her plan with Caroline. Time to detonate the bomb she'd built for herself. Amanda decided to throw a gender reveal party at 4 months. She'd rented a community center, invited both families plus friends, and ordered one of those cakes that's supposed to reveal pink or blue when you cut into it. She was treating it like the social event of the year. What made it even more twisted was how she'd positioned me in all the planning. According to Amanda, I was the supportive husband who was so excited to be a father. She told people I was helping plan everything, that we were doing this journey together. The invitations went out with both our names as hosts. There were photos of us from earlier in our marriage, back when I actually loved her, edited to look like we were this blissful couple expecting our first child. Amanda had no clue her party was about to be the end credits of her perfect lie. 3 days before the party, I made my final preparations. I met with my lawyer one last time to review everything and get the divorce papers finalized. We'd prepared a comprehensive filing that included adultery charges, asset protection claims, and a request for full documentation of Amanda's deception. "The evidence you've gathered is overwhelming," my lawyer said, reviewing the email screenshots, photos, and timeline I'd compiled. "She won't be able to deny any of this." I also prepared copies of the key evidence, printouts of the email chain between Amanda and David, photos of them together, timeline of their meetings. I had everything organized in folders, ready to distribute. Marcus offered to come to the party for moral support, but I told him to stay away. "This is going to be messy, and I don't need you getting arrested for punching David in the face." "Fair point," he said. "But if you need bail money, just call." The day of the party, Amanda was practically glowing with excitement. She kept talking about how perfect everything was going to be, how everyone we love would be there to celebrate this miracle. When I walked into the community center at 2 p.m., about 50 people were there. Amanda was holding court near the cake table, one hand on her visible bump, accepting congratulations and gifts. She looked radiant in a flowing dress, playing the part of the glowing, expectant mother perfectly. Caroline was right beside her, helping coordinate everything. David was setting up the sound system, playing the role of the supportive brother-in-law. Both families were there, plus friends and co-workers. Everyone was buying into the beautiful lie Amanda had constructed. "There's the proud daddy!" someone called when they saw me, and several people came over to shake my hand and pat my back. I smiled and nodded, accepting congratulations while my stomach churned. These people had no idea they were celebrating adultery and betrayal. Amanda came over and kissed my cheek for the audience. "Perfect timing," she whispered. "We're about to cut the cake." "Actually," I said loud enough for nearby people to hear, "I have something I'd like to say first." Amanda's smile flickered for just a second, but she nodded. "Of course, honey." Someone got everyone's attention, and the room gradually quieted down. About 50 people turned to me, expecting some heartfelt speech about becoming a father. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd prepared. "Before we celebrate," I started, my voice calm and clear, "I think everyone should know the truth about this pregnancy." Amanda's face went white. David, across the room, dropped the microphone he was holding. 4 months ago, Amanda had been having an affair with David. I held up my phone, showing the email screenshots. Not a one-time mistake. A deliberate, ongoing relationship designed to get her pregnant. The room went dead silent. You could hear people breathing. The baby we're supposedly celebrating today isn't mine. It's David's. And Amanda's plan was to let Caroline raise David's biological child while thinking it was a generous gift from her sister. That's when Amanda lost it. "You bastard!" she screamed, lunging at me with her hands out like claws. "How dare you ruin this? How dare you humiliate me like this?" Two of her cousins caught her before she could reach me, but she kept screaming. "None of you understand. This was about family. This was about love." Caroline, meanwhile, had gone from confusion to horror to rage in about 30 seconds. She was staring at the emails I'd handed her, reading her husband's words about how to coordinate meetings with her sister. "You sick bitch," Caroline said, her voice deadly quiet. "You've been screwing my husband and lying to my face for months." David came running over, took one look at the chaos, and tried to grab the evidence folder from someone's hands. "Give me that," he demanded, but I stepped in front of him. "Don't," I said simply. David shoved me. Hard. Probably thought he could intimidate me into backing down. That was a mistake. I hit him once, a clean right cross that dropped him to the floor in front of 50 witnesses. His nose started bleeding immediately. "Anyone else want to put their hands on me?" I asked the room. Amanda was still ranting about how this was for the family. Like that made betrayal a love language. Caroline was crying and calling Amanda every name in the book. David was on the floor holding his broken nose. Perfect chaos. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the divorce papers. "Amanda," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "you're being served." I dropped the papers at her feet, turned to the room and said, "The party's over." Then I walked out, got in my truck, and drove away while the most important people in Amanda's life learned exactly who she really was. The weeks following the gender reveal were pure legal warfare. Amanda hired the most expensive divorce attorney she could find, convinced she could somehow spin this situation in her favor. She had no idea how thoroughly I'd prepared for this fight. Her first move was trying to claim temporary spousal support, arguing that her pregnancy made her unable to work full-time. My attorney shot that down by pointing out that she'd been working steadily throughout the affair, and that the pregnancy wasn't mine to financially support. Amanda's lawyer tried to challenge my asset protection moves, claiming I'd hidden money to avoid paying her what she deserved. But Marcus and I had documented everything properly, and every business expense was legitimate and verifiable. Marcus had to give a deposition about the business transfer, and he was brutal. When Amanda's attorney suggested the transfer was suspicious, Marcus replied, "What's suspicious is your client screwing her sister's husband and trying to pass off the baby as my brother's. The business transfer was legitimate. Your client's a liar." The discovery phase was brutal for Amanda. She had to turn over her phone, laptop, and email accounts. Every lie she'd told, every coordination with David, every manipulation of Caroline. It all came out in legal documents that would become part of the permanent record. David's divorce with Caroline was moving even faster. She'd caught him trying to delete evidence from his devices and had gotten a court order to preserve everything. His lawyer was basically telling him to roll over and give Caroline whatever she wanted. But Amanda wasn't going down easy. She started making increasingly desperate claims. First, she tried to argue that the affair was my fault because I'd been emotionally distant. When that didn't work, she claimed I'd forced her into seeking comfort elsewhere through my neglect. The DNA test was scheduled for after the baby was born, but my attorney found a way to get preliminary genetic markers tested during pregnancy. Results came back 0% chance I was the father, 99.8% chance David was. Amanda's lawyer tried to claim the test was unreliable, but it was court-ordered and conducted by a state-certified lab. That's when Amanda completely lost her mind. She showed up at my house on a Tuesday evening, 8 months pregnant and furious. I made the mistake of letting her in because she looked like she was about to collapse on my doorstep. "We need to talk," she said, settling into my couch like she still lived there. "No, we don't. Everything goes through the lawyers." "This is insane," she exploded. "You're destroying our entire family over what? A mistake? People make mistakes." "Amanda, you didn't make a mistake. You planned this for months. You lied to everyone who cared about you. You manipulated your own sister." "I was trying to help her," Amanda screamed. "Caroline wanted a baby so badly, and I was giving her that. I was giving her David's baby." "Without telling her it was David's baby. You were going to let her raise her husband's child with another woman and never tell her the truth." Amanda stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Sometimes families have to make sacrifices. Sometimes we have to do hard things for the people we love. You didn't do this for Caroline. You did this because you wanted David and found a way to justify it." That's not true. But her voice cracked when she said it. Amanda, I read your emails. All of them. I know exactly what you did and why you did it. Stop lying to me and stop lying to yourself. She was quiet for a minute, then tried a different approach. Okay, fine. Maybe I made some bad choices, but we can work through this. People get past affairs all the time. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild trust. Amanda, you're pregnant with another man's child. So what? You could adopt him. We could raise him together. David doesn't even want kids, he told me that. He only went along with this because I convinced him it would help Caroline. The delusion was stunning. She actually believed she could talk her way out of this. Let me make this very simple for you, I said. I will never, under any circumstances, take you back. I will never raise David's child. I will never forgive you for what you did to your sister. We are getting divorced, and you're going to get as little as possible from me. That's when she really lost it. You can't do this to me, she screamed. I gave you the best years of my life. I supported your stupid business. I put up with your workaholic crap. I made sacrifices for this marriage. What sacrifices, Amanda? What exactly did you sacrifice? I could have done better than you. I had other options, but I chose you, and this is how you repay me? By not letting you cheat on me with your sister's husband? Yeah, I'm a real monster. She stood up, furious and desperate. Fine. You want to play hardball? I'll show you hardball. I'll tell everyone you were abusive. I'll say you threatened me, that you made me afraid for my safety. Go ahead, I said calmly. Make false accusations against me. See how that works out in court when I have emails of you coordinating affairs and lying to everyone? You think you're so smart, she hissed. You think you've won, but I'll make sure you get nothing. I'll drag this out for years. I'll make your life hell. Amanda, I've already won. You just haven't figured it out yet. She stood there for another minute, probably trying to think of some other threat or manipulation. When nothing came to her, she stormed out. 2 days later, my attorney called to tell me Amanda had filed a restraining order against me, claiming I'd threatened her during our conversation. Did you threaten her? He asked. Nope, but I recorded the whole conversation on my phone. You recorded it? Every word. She admitted to the affair, admitted to lying to Caroline, and admitted to planning false abuse allegations. Send me that recording immediately. Amanda's restraining order was dismissed within a week. The judge listened to the recording and warned Amanda's attorney that filing false accusations could result in sanctions. That's when Amanda finally understood she was going to lose everything. Meanwhile, Amanda's parents showed exactly what they thought about the affair. They were strict religious people who'd raised their daughters to value marriage and family above everything else. When they found out Amanda had been cheating on me with David and planned to deceive Caroline about the baby's paternity, they completely cut her off. Amanda's mother had called her a disgrace to the family name, and her father had said she was no daughter of his until she repented for her sins. They refused to help her financially or emotionally and told other family members that Amanda had brought shame on their entire family. Amanda tried reaching out to them multiple times, but they wouldn't take her calls. Her own parents had disowned her. Amanda's baby was born in January, a healthy boy she named Tyler. The paternity test confirmed what we already knew. David was the father. I had no legal or financial responsibility. The custody arrangement between Amanda and David was a disaster from day one. Neither of them actually wanted the responsibility of raising the child, but both were too proud to give up their parental rights. David was ordered to pay child support, but he'd lost his job after the scandal broke and was working construction for half his previous salary. Amanda was barely scraping by with freelance work and government assistance. Caroline wanted nothing to do with the baby, which was understandable. The kid was a living reminder of the worst betrayal of her life. My divorce was finalized in March. The final settlement was even better than I'd hoped. Since I'd bought my house before marriage, Amanda had no claim to it. She got her personal belongings, her car, which was mostly paid off, and about $6,000 from our joint account, everything that was left after legitimate business expenses. She tried one last desperate move during the final hearing, claiming I'd stolen marital assets by transferring my business to Marcus. The judge looked at the documentation, confirmed everything was legal and properly filed, and told Amanda's attorney to move on. Amanda also tried to claim she deserved alimony because the pregnancy had affected her earning capacity. My attorney pointed out that the pregnancy was the result of adultery and that Amanda had no right to financial support for another man's child. Motion denied, the judge said. Next item. I kept the house, the business, which Marcus immediately transferred back to me, and most of our assets. Amanda got enough to survive on for a few months and nothing more. But the real destruction was social and professional. Amanda's reputation was completely shot. Her freelance clients had dropped her after word got around about the affair and lies. Her friend group had split apart as people chose sides. David lost his job when his employer found out about the scandal. Apparently, using company time and resources for personal affairs violated his employment contract. He also lost most of his friends and had to move back in with his parents at age 38. Caroline rebuilt her life successfully. She'd started dating someone new, got a promotion at work, and seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. She'd also completely cut contact with Amanda and David. Amanda tried reaching out to various family members for help, but the story had spread through both families. Her own parents were embarrassed by her behavior and maintained their position that she'd disgraced the family. Even her cousins wanted nothing to do with her. Meanwhile, my life had gotten better in every possible way. The business Marcus and I ran together was thriving. We'd expanded and were making more money than I'd ever imagined. I'd also started dating Ruby, a woman I'd met through business networking who had her own successful ceramic studio. She was everything Amanda wasn't: honest, straightforward, emotionally stable. Around this time, I decided to get a dog. I'd always wanted one, but Amanda was allergic. I went to the shelter and came home with a 2-year-old golden retriever mix named Buddy, who'd been returned twice for being too energetic. Buddy turned out to be the perfect addition to my life. He was goofy as hell, would chase his own tail for 10 minutes straight, tried to catch raindrops with his mouth, and had this habit of bringing me random objects as gifts: socks, TV remotes, once an entire roll of toilet paper. But he was also incredibly loyal. Never left my side when I was working in the garage, always knew when I needed cheering up, and had this sixth sense about people's character. The first time Ruby came over to meet Buddy, he immediately brought her his favorite tennis ball and rolled over for belly rubs. Amanda used to say dogs were dirty and unpredictable. Buddy was neither. He was just honest about what he wanted and gave unconditional loyalty in return. Marcus thought it was hilarious. "You traded a lying, cheating wife for a goofy, loyal dog. Seems like an upgrade to me." 6 months after the divorce was final, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Amanda was living in a studio apartment across town, working random gig jobs to make rent. David was 2 states away trying to rebuild his career and rarely saw his son. The kid was the only innocent victim in all this, ping-ponging between 2 parents who resented him for existing and reminded them daily of their worst decisions. 2 years later, Amanda's life completely imploded. She was working at a retail job in a different city, living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment. Her son Tyler stayed with David's parents most of the time because Amanda couldn't afford consistent childcare. David himself had moved to another state for work and was struggling to make his child support payments. The custody arrangement was a nightmare for everyone involved. Amanda and David could barely communicate without fighting, which meant Tyler, the kid, was constantly caught in the middle. Caroline married the guy she'd been dating and was genuinely happy. They'd moved to a nice suburb and were talking about starting their own family. She'd made it clear that Amanda and David were dead to her permanently. Amanda had tried multiple times to reconcile with family members, but the damage was too extensive. Her parents maintained their position that she'd brought shame on the family. The last I heard, they still refused to acknowledge her existence or help her in any way. Meanwhile, my life had continued improving. Ruby and I had gotten engaged, and she'd moved into my house, the house I'd bought before I ever met Amanda. We'd turned the spare bedroom into Ruby's art studio, and she loved having the space to work on her pottery. Buddy had taken to Ruby immediately, and watching them together convinced me I'd made the right choice. Amanda used to complain about everything. The house was too small, the neighborhood was too quiet, my work took too much time. Ruby appreciated what we were building together. The business was more successful than ever. Marcus and I had bought 2 more properties and were expanding into custom home building. We'd also hired 3 full-time employees and were booked solid for the next 18 months. Ruby and I got married last fall. Small ceremony, close friends and family, no drama. Surrounded by people who actually supported us. Buddy was our ring bearer. He walked down the aisle with the rings tied to his collar, tail wagging the whole time. During the reception, he spent the evening going from table to table collecting pets and treats from guests. About a month after Ruby and I got married, I had a Sunday morning ritual. Coffee on the back deck with Buddy, while Ruby worked on her pottery in the garage studio. It was one of those perfect fall mornings. Crisp air, leaves just starting to turn. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I figured it might be a neighbor or maybe a package delivery. I opened the door and felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Amanda was standing on my porch, holding Tyler. The kid was clinging to her, face buried in her shoulder. She looked terrible. hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in a while. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I didn't know where else to go." I didn't invite her in. Just stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "David's gone," she continued, her voice cracking. "He hasn't paid child support in 4 months. I lost my apartment last week. We've been staying in my car." Tyler peeked at me from his mother's shoulder, then buried his face again. The kid had David's eyes and Amanda's chin. Not his fault his parents were disasters. "That's not my problem, Amanda. Please," she whispered. "Just a loan. Just enough to get a security deposit on a new place. I'll pay you back. I swear." "No." Her eyes filled with tears. "We have nowhere to go. My parents won't even answer my calls. Caroline blocked my number. I've tried everything. There are shelters," I said. "Social services, churches, resources that help people in your situation. I've tried. Please, I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for Tyler." I heard footsteps behind me, and Ruby appeared at my side. She was wearing her clay-stained apron, hair tied back, looking beautiful and concerned. "Everything okay?" she asked me quietly. Amanda's face crumpled when she saw Ruby. The reality of my new life, happy, stable, moved on, seemed to hit her all at once. Her eyes darted to Ruby's wedding ring, then to mine. "You're married," she whispered. "Yes," I said simply. Amanda started crying then, genuine, broken sobs. Tyler looked frightened and confused by his mother's breakdown. "I've lost everything," she choked out. "Everything! And you've just replaced me and moved on like I never existed. You made your choices, Amanda." Amanda wiped her face with her free hand, still holding Tyler with the other. "So that's it? You're just going to turn us away?" "Yes," I said. "This isn't my responsibility anymore. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police." "You wouldn't," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I pulled out my phone. "You have 30 seconds to get off my property." Ruby touched my arm gently. "I'll get her some water for the road. And maybe a snack for the little one?" I nodded, and Ruby disappeared into the kitchen. That small act of kindness seemed to break something in Amanda. She sat down heavily on the porch step, still holding Tyler. "What happened to you?" she asked. "You used to be such a kind person." Ruby returned with a bottle of water, an apple, and a granola bar. She handed them to Amanda without a word. "Thank you," Amanda whispered. "You need to go now," I said. "Don't come back here again." I watched her walk to her car, an old beater that had replaced the nice sedan she'd had during our marriage. Tyler looked back at me over her shoulder, a child caught in a mess he didn't create. As they drove away, I felt nothing but relief. Buddy nudged my leg, tennis ball in mouth, ready to continue our morning as if nothing had happened. That's the difference between her and me. When I realized my marriage was built on lies, I made hard choices to protect myself and get out. When Amanda realized she wasn't happy in her marriage, she made selfish choices that hurt everyone around her. She had asked me to sacrifice my self-respect and raise another man's child to cover up her affair. She'd expected me to participate in her deception and help her manipulate Caroline. I chose the truth. It sucked, but it was better than playing house in a circus.